Well, Exodus chapter 7, we're going on for another week to learn more about this experience that, again, most of us are quite familiar with this story. Probably one of the more popular stories, or well-known stories, I should say, from the Old Testament. But some more fun stuff we get to learn. So let's jump into chapter 7. So in this one, Moses is appointed to give the word of the Lord to Pharaoh. The Lord will multiply signs and wonders in Egypt. Aaron's rod becomes a serpent. The river is turned into blood. The magicians imitate the miracles of Moses and Aaron. So now remember from the previous chapters that Moses and Aaron have already spoken this isn't like the beginning of the speaking. They've already been speaking with Pharaoh. They spoke with Pharaoh and they basically gave him a chance to willingly follow the command of God that Moses is to give to Pharaoh. He declined. So now it's coming down to the next phase, which is showing the signs and wonders, basically. So verse 1, and the Lord said unto Moses, See, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet. Now, Joseph Smith makes one change, actually, well, technically two changes to this verse, okay? He changes the word God to prophet. I have made thee a prophet unto Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy spokesman, is what it comes down to. So Joseph Smith had put that change in there, so which it makes it a little bit easier to understand. Verse 2, Thou shalt speak all that I command thee, and Aaron thy brother shall speak unto Pharaoh, and he send the children of Israel out of his land. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. Again, verse 3 doesn't read quite right. Why in the world would God harden Pharaoh's heart and make him not let the people go while he's trying to command him to actually let the people go? It seems contradictory in here. Well, Joseph Smith, in his translation, has adjusted this for us. He says, and Pharaoh will harden his heart, as I said unto thee, and thou shalt multiply my signs. So it's not this little game where God's like, hey, Moses, go tell Pharaoh to do this, and then I'm going to make Pharaoh say no to it. You know, it's not like there's this manipulation by God that's happening here to make a story up or something like that. You know, it seems weird if agency is so important, as we have seen already through the Old Testament, why would God basically force Pharaoh to make certain choices? Because that, in a way, Pharaoh is just a puppet. His agency would be taken away from him. So what we learn, though, is there's a mistranslation, a misinterpretation of what's going on, and that what happens is God is not telling Moses, I'm going to harden his heart. God is telling Moses that Pharaoh is going to be hardening his heart. So Pharaoh has his choice, but because of God's wisdom, he understands what Pharaoh's going to do. He knows what the world from Pharaoh's perspective is like. And so he knows what to anticipate in dealing with Pharaoh and his way of thinking. So something just important for us to understand there. Okay, so verse 4, but Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that I may lay my hand upon Egypt, and bring forth mine armies and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. So this is, but if Pharaoh will not harden, then I will do this. That's really what it comes down to. So it's not God hardening Pharaoh's heart so that he can destroy with his armies. It's realizing that Pharaoh's not going to comply. And so this is what we're going to end up having to do. So verse 5, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I stretch forth mine hand upon Egypt and bring out the children of Israel from among them. Now, this is going to cause some major problems for Egypt. Okay, not just losing their entire servant class, basically, that's helped them to have a better life. You know, Egyptians' life have been elevated and been better because they've had these servants there this whole time. Economically, there's going to be a lot of changes and things happen in Egypt because of the loss of them, but it's more than that. We're going to talk about that as we go on. All right, verse 6, and Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded them, so did they. Verse 7, Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron was 83 years old when they spake unto Pharaoh. And the Lord spake unto, which means Aaron's a little bit older than Moses. Which makes you wonder, how did Aaron survive the killing of all the kids? Maybe he was just old enough to miss the mark of what age the Pharaoh wanted the kids thrown in the river. And when the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, When Pharaoh shall speak unto you, saying, Show a miracle for you, then thou shalt say unto Aaron, Take thy rod and cast it before Pharaoh, and it shall become a serpent. So this is what's going to happen basically, or we're going to prove that our God is great by showing you these miracles. Okay, now always remember, Brigham Young once said, if I remember right, it was him that said this, that actually, no, it's actually in the Doctrine and Covenants, come to think of it. I can't remember off the top of my head where it is, but there's in the Doctrine and Covenants, and if you know where it is, put it in the comments where we can find this reference. But it says that a nation or a nation that seeks signs is an adulterous nation. So God knows He's going to have to use signs, basically. So in this challenge, and so I think that might say something about how Egypt is at this time, basically. So verse 10, and Moses and Aaron went in unto Pharaoh. So this is the second time they've been to Pharaoh. And they did so as the Lord had commanded. And Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. So they went back in. Pharaoh's probably like, now what do you want, Moses? And Moses says, you need to let the children go. God has told me to come in here to teach you this. And Pharaoh's like, no, we're not going to let them go. I told you that last time. Then Moses says, great, then we will show the might of our God. There probably wasn't a discussion about that. You can't let them go. Our gods are greater than your gods or something like that. It's probably a conversation that came up. And so Pharaoh's probably like, well, then prove that your God is great. So Moses says, Aaron, cast your rod down. So he throws his rod down, turns into a snake. So that's probably a little bit of the backstory that's in there that we didn't get in the Old Testament here. So verse 11, then Pharaoh called the wise men and the sorcerers. Okay, remember, these are the priests. Okay, they spend their time studying, doing the dream interpretations, helping with the embalming of bodies, taking care of giving obeisance and sacrifices and things to the previous pharaohs, burning incense at the tombs and other things like that, taking care of the previous pharaohs and things. So they're coming in. Now the magicians of Egypt, they also did in like manner with their enchantments. For they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents. So, let's just pause that right in the middle there. The Pharaoh has his wise men come in, and they cast down rods, and they become serpents. Okay, but here's what happens. Aaron's rod swallowed up their rod, so that there's probably a bit of a battle. Aaron's rod won and basically gobbled up them. And then he probably picked up from the tail, turned back into a rod, and I'm sure they're going, holy crap, okay, we duplicated this, but now our rods are gone. They didn't just turn into a snake, they did this. Now, some of you might be thinking, how can that happen? How can a piece of wood turn into a snake? I mean, it's interesting to think of it from Aaron's standpoint of, the God doing that for him. But how in the world did the Pharaoh's magicians and sorcerers have the power to do that? Could there be a sleight of hand trick going on like a magician would use to make it look like there's magic, but there really isn't? Maybe they had a rod and then they had a snake in a bag or something. And then when they laid the rod down, they threw the snake out, or I don't know. I'm not sure how it happened. But there could be possible some sleight of hand in there. The other thing we have to look at as we look at these miracles or these signs and things that are coming up is understand that Satan has real power. Now, Satan, here's the thing to understand about Satan, okay? Satan and his ideas and plan is the anti-Christ. So whatever is what Christ says, Satan's against it, okay? When you think of the straight and narrow path, that is the law of God, okay? That's what Christ wants us to do, is follow this straight and narrow path. Now, a straight and narrow path means a path that has defined edges, so we know where the line is. We understand the commandments. We know where those lines are that we don't cross. Everything on either side of the path that's outside of those lines is Satan's playground. Okay, so he doesn't want us to go off the path. He wants us to go 1 degree towards the edge of the path, because he knows eventually that's going to lead us right off the path and we're not even going to realize it. Okay, just like how planes fly, 1 degree off now, when you travel 1,000 miles, you're way off course. The whole analogy of you don't throw a frog in boiling water because he'll jump out, but if you put a frog in water and then slowly turn up the heat, he won't jump out and he'll boil to death. So that's kind of how Satan likes to do things as well. So it's important for us to understand that Satan will use his power in any direction he can, so long as it fulfills the purpose of keeping us from doing what God wants. It doesn't matter the method or the tactic. The goal is keeping us from doing what God wants. Okay, Satan tried to literally attack Joseph Smith. Okay, if the first vision, you remember, he literally tried to choke him to death, and it didn't work because God saved him. Then later, he tried to appear as a angel of light to Joseph to confuse him and try to get him off this path of following God. So he'll play both sides. He'll play the good. He'll be your buddy, and then he'll be your worst enemy. Because again, the point isn't to help you out. The point is to get you off course. So if he can exert some power and convince people otherwise to nullify things, then he might do that. There are, you could say there's like a dark arts or people that would learn things or do stuff that, maybe Satan's kind of powering some mysticism or other things to convince people. Again, if Satan can make you convinced that something is there, then if that belief that something is there convinces you that you shouldn't do the commandments of God the right way, then he's won. He's totally won. He doesn't matter if it's a slight variation or a major variation. As long as it's a variation off the path, off that commandment, he'll get you. He will get you. He knows he'll eventually just take you off. So if he can perform a miracle to convince you that your church or whatever is best is true, and if you believe it's true because of these miracles, if your whole faith in your religion is because of miracles, then it's easy for Satan to convince you to keep believing, because he just has to produce miracles periodically and you will not leave it. And if that's not the right church, then he's convinced you to go the wrong way. So Satan does have great power. It is possible that Satan is helping with this and kind of encouraging this along and trying to help keep Pharaoh from letting the children of Israel go. That is possible. That is possible. There might be some logic behind some of these, like we could do some scientific understanding, or there's some magician's sleight of hand on some of these little things. We don't know for sure. We don't have enough information to know exactly for sure how they would work. We can speculate on possibilities and options, but we don't know for sure exactly how it worked. We don't have a writing from these magicians going, you wouldn't believe what we did today. This guy Moses shows up and they throw their staff down, and so we did it this way, and this is how we snuck it in, and we kind of fooled him, didn't we? So we don't have that kind of record. We don't know from these magicians and the sorcerer standpoint what they did. So a little bit of a run there for a little rant, but just something to understand as we look at these, because there's a lot more miracles and things coming up. Okay, so let's go to verse 13. And it says here, and he hardened Pharaoh's heart, that he hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had said. And of course, Joseph Smith corrects this, and Pharaoh hardened his heart. Okay, basically. So just realize that there's that challenge in the translation. And the Lord, verse 14, and the Lord said unto Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hardened, he refuseth to let the people go. Get thee unto Pharaoh in the morning. So now they did this thing, and then they left. Basically, whether there's more dialogue in there, we don't know. I'm sure even the priests were like, okay, his rod ate our rods, and it turned back into a stick. That's some pretty crazy magic. We can make this trick happen, but that's a little crazier trick, that his rod ate our rods basically when they were snakes and turned back into a rod. So I'm sure even the magicians are like, we're going to have a hard time keeping up if they keep this going. I wouldn't be surprised if that's in there. So, okay. Verse 15, get thee unto Pharaoh in the morning. So they've left Pharaoh's presence, and now they are, the Lord is saying, you need to go back tomorrow. In the morning, go back. Lo, he goeth out unto the water, and thou shalt stand by the river's brink against he come. meaning to meet him, basically. This, in the Hebrew translation, and the rod which was turned to a serpent shalt thou take in thine hand. So the Lord is telling Moses through the Spirit here, hey, look, Pharaoh has hardened his heart, but tomorrow he's going to go down to the river and be on the river. So what you need to do is go to the bank of the river and bring your staff with it. Okay, and then verse 16, thou shalt say unto him, the Lord God of the Hebrews has sent me unto thee, saying, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. And behold, hitherto thou wouldest not hear. Thus saith the Lord. It's always important whenever that comes up. Thus saith the Lord. In this thou shalt know that I am the Lord. Behold, I will smite with the rod that is in mine hand upon the waters which are in the river, and they shall be turned to blood. So this is the Nile turning to blood. Okay. We know blood and water are two different things. We know that blood, blood as a liquid is kind of water, a little bit of water with all these blood cells and other things in it that give it the color and consistency that's a little thicker and different than water itself. But we know chemically there's a lot of differences in there. And of course, verse 18, excuse me, I'm speaking a little too fast. And the fish that is in the river shall die, and the river shall stink, and the Egyptians shall loathe to drink of the water of the river. So this is what the Lord is telling Moses to do, is to go do this basically. In verse 19, and the Lord spake unto Moses, say unto Aaron, take thy rod and stretch out thine hand upon the waters of Egypt, upon their streams, upon their rivers, and upon their ponds, and upon all their pools of water, that they may become blood, and that there may be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, both in vessels of wood and in vessels of stone. So not just hit this one river or a spot of the river, everything in Egypt is going to be turned to blood. That's a lot. That's a lot of water. That's crazy that, oh yeah, yesterday I went down and got these pots full of water so that we can have cleaning water and drinking water at our home, but now suddenly they're all turned to blood. Pretty crazy. Can you imagine living in Egypt at this time? All right, so verse 20, and Moses and Aaron did so as the Lord commanded. So they went down to the river, they saw Pharaoh, and went through the whole dialogue and did this stuff. And Pharaoh's like, whatever, you can't do that. Most likely is what was happening. And so and he lifted up the rod and smote the waters that were in the river in the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants, and all the waters that were in the river were turned to blood. That is what happened. Now we have a interesting reference to the book of John chapter 20. So kind of some interesting parallels that we get in here. Let's see, I think it was verse, what verse was that? Let me look back on that one. I have a reference here to John 20:11. Let's see if this will work. John 20:11. It says, but Mary stood out at the sepulchre weeping, and as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre. So I'm not quite sure why those two are there. I think this was not necessarily the body, but representing the blood of Christ, possibly the great sacrifice that would come, showing that there's some symbolism there, but I think I might have got that reference wrong. So I might have to try to look that one up and fix that later. So it turned to blood. Everything, all water in Egypt turned to blood. Verse 21, and the fish that was in the river died, and the river stank, and the Egyptians could not drink of the water of the river, and there was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. And the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments, and Pharaoh's heart was hardened, neither did he hearken unto them as the Lord had said. So verse 22 is interesting because basically Pharaoh probably went back to his magicians going, how in the world did he do this? And they said, oh, this is a simple trick. Let me show you how he did this. And so they showed how it's logically possible to have maybe not literal blood, but the appearance of blood in the water. But the problem is now you've got all of these containers that were filled up prior to Moses and Aaron doing this that are turning into blood, and ponds, pools of water They're even disconnected from the river that are turning into blood. So while they technically could probably find a way to justify what had happened, sort of, the scale and magnitude that it's happening has got to be just so mind-boggling that it's crazy to think that they could justify and reason out how Moses and Aaron did it. All right, verse 23, Pharaoh turned and went into his house. Neither did he set his heart to this also. And all the Egyptians digged round about the river for water to drink, for they could not drink of the water of the river. So they're looking to find like either wells, or they're trying to get water that will like filter. If you dig next to a river, basically, if you're ever looking for water, you're up in the mountains, most water, unfortunately, is contaminated with sometimes parasites or bacteria or bugs or things in it because of animal feces or dead animals or other things that happen in upstream, basically. But what you can do is if you go about 6 inches in and dig a hole right there, eventually the water can seep through the dirt and fill that up. It's still kind of dirty water, but that dirt has actually filtered most of the junk out of it. So now you can actually pull that water out and go boil it, and you've cleaned some of the junk out of the water already. So it's that water is going to be a lot cleaner than getting it from the stream itself. So that could be what they're doing, is either trying to dig wells to find water and then probably end up finding blood, or they're trying to filter it through the sides, and it's not working. And so 7 days were fulfilled after the Lord had smitten the river. So 7 days this has been going on. Basically, that all the water was turned to blood. That's crazy. You got to be way dehydrated. I mean, that's 7 days with no water. You are going to be depleted of energy. If you've ever gone on like a 3-day fast, and those are hard to do without drinking water. They recommend you not do a 3-day fast with no water. You should be drinking water, just fast from food, because you need to have water going. From teaching survival classes and other things in the past, if you go 7 days without any water at all, you are going to be in bad shape health-wise. You're going to be really having lots of problems. So you need water. Water is very important. You can go almost 30 days without food. Honestly, you can make it almost 30 days without food. You're going to be really skinny at the end of those 30 days. But you can go almost 30 days without food before your body is shutting down and you're going to be leaving this life. But 7 days without water, good luck. You're going to be really close to death at that point too. So they pushed Israel right to the brink of severe dehydration, all kinds of problems. And this is a desert country, so it's warm, it's hot. So the heat's not going to help either, because now your body's trying to perspire and it can't. And so you're going to lose more water that way and have other problems. So they probably were having to consider pulling water from outside the country, from other places, and bring water in. Import water to an extent is a very possibility, which I'm sure was just totally crazy to experience and to deal with back then. So there's one of the first, the second and first, the two. We had the snake, rod turned to snake. Now we have the river turning into blood. The miracles that God is having Moses and Aaron do to try to convince the Egyptians and Pharaoh that they really need to let the children of Israel go. So let's go to chapter 8, where we can learn about the next set of them.